Theory 1. The let them theory. Right now, somewhere in your life, there's a person who isn't calling you back. A friend who canceled last minute. Again, a family member who keeps making the same choice you never make for them. And some part of you is spending real, finite energy trying to fix it, trying to control it, trying to make them see it your way. Here's the uncomfortable truth a neuroscientist would tell you, that energy is being burned on something you were never wired to control in the first place. And the moment you understand why, you get some of that energy back. This video walks through 5 psychological theories, some ancient, some going viral on social media right now, that share one thing in common. They aren't just feel-good quotes. Each one is grounded in real, published research on how the brain actually regulates stress, mood, focus, and connection. We're not going to just tell you the theory. We're going to open it up, show you the study behind it, and show you exactly how to use it starting tonight. Let's start with the one that has quietly become one of the most talked about mental health concepts of the decade, the let them theory. You probably heard the phrase. 2 words, let them, that spread across social media and eventually became a best-selling book by Mel Robbins. On the surface, it sounds almost too simple to matter. Someone pulls away from you, cancels on you, disappoints you, and instead of chasing them, explaining yourself, or trying to fix it, you simply say, internally, let them not show up. Let them think what they think. Let them make the choice that confuses you. And then this is the part most people skip. Let me decide what I do next. Let me protect my energy. Let me choose the people who choose me back. It sounds like a mantra. It's actually a shortcut into one of the most well-established ideas in psychology, locus of control. In 1954, a psychologist named Julian Rotter began studying something deceptively simple, where people believe control over their lives actually comes from. He found that people generally fall somewhere on a spectrum. On one end are people with what's called an external locus of control. They believe their outcomes are largely determined by other people, luck, or circumstances outside themselves. On the other end are people with an internal locus of control. They believe that while they can't control everything that happens to them, they can control their responses, their choices, their next move. Decades of research since Rotter's original work have found something consistent. People who lean toward an internal locus of control report lower stress, higher resilience, and better outcomes across almost every area of life researchers have measured: relationships, career, even physical health. Not because they have more control over the world, because they've stopped wasting energy trying to control the parts of it that were never theirs to control in the first place. This is what let them is actually doing underneath the catchy phrasing. When your friend cancels and you catch yourself spinning, replaying the conversation, wondering what you did wrong, drafting a text explaining your side, your brain is operating from an external locus of control. It's treating someone else's decision as something you need to manage, analyze, or reverse. There's also a nervous system component here worth understanding. When you feel out of control, when someone's behavior feels unpredictable or threatening to your sense of security, your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, treats that uncertainty the way it would treat any other perceived danger. It ramps up. Your thoughts start racing. You feel that tight, urgent need to do something. The phrase let them works partly because it's a verbal off-ramp. It gives your brain permission to stop treating someone else's behavior as a 5-alarm fire that requires your intervention. Here's how you actually use this. The next time someone in your life pulls away, cancels, disappoints you, or makes a choice you don't understand, don't suppress the feeling, and don't chase an explanation. Say the 2 words, even just in your head. Let them be who they're going to be. Then immediately ask the second, more important question. What do I do with my time and energy now? Call a different friend. Go do the thing you wanted to do anyway. Redirect the energy you were about to spend managing someone else's choices into your own next move. This isn't about becoming cold or detached from people who matter to you. It's about recognizing a distinction most of us never learned: the difference between what's happening around you and what's happening within your control. One neuroscientist's way of putting it is this: you have exactly 2 levers in any interpersonal situation: your reaction and your next choice. Everything else belongs to the other person. The sooner you stop gripping the levers that were never yours, the more energy you have for the ones that are. That's theory one. Now let's talk about something that sounds almost too basic to be powerful, and yet it's been shown to physically reshape the brain. Theory two, the sunlight theory. If you've ever noticed your mood quietly dropping over the course of a gray, indoor week, not a dramatic crash, just a slow dimming, like someone turned down a light you didn't know was on, there's a very specific biological reason for that. And the fix is almost embarrassingly simple, which is exactly why most people ignore it. The sunlight theory says this: when your mood drops or your mind feels foggy, step outside into natural daylight, even for a few minutes. It sounds like the kind of advice your grandmother would give you. It also happens to be one of the more rigorously studied interventions in all of behavioral neuroscience. Here's the mechanism. Your brain runs on an internal clock called a circadian rhythm, regulated by a tiny structure called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, sitting just above where your optic nerves cross. This clock doesn't just control when you feel sleepy. It regulates hormone release, body temperature, digestion, and, critically, mood-related neurotransmitters, especially serotonin. And the single strongest signal your circadian clock uses to set itself correctly is light, specifically bright, natural light hitting your eyes. Researchers studying this connection have found that brain serotonin turnover, essentially how actively your brain is producing and cycling this mood-stabilizing neurotransmitter, correlates directly with how many hours of sunshine you were exposed to that day. Not general daylight, actual measured sunshine. More light exposure during the day tracks with higher serotonin activity, and serotonin is one of the primary neurotransmitters implicated in mood regulation, motivation, and that sense of things feeling manageable versus overwhelming. This isn't just correlation dressed up as causation, either. Bright light therapy, sitting in front of a specialized light box that mimics natural sunlight, is now a clinically validated treatment for seasonal affective disorder and is used as an adjunct treatment for major depressive disorder. It's not an alternative medicine footnote. It's used in hospital psychiatric settings. And here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. A randomized controlled trial tracking patients with mood disorders found that 4 weeks of consistent bright light exposure produced a measurable increase in the volume of a specific region of the hippocampal formation, the dentate gyrus, an area associated with neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons. Let that sit for a second. Sunlight, at a high enough consistent dose, was associated with structural growth in a brain region tied to learning, memory, and emotional regulation. This isn't a mood trick. It's closer to physical therapy for your brain. There's a second layer to this, too. It isn't only about serotonin. Light exposure, especially in the morning, is what keeps your circadian rhythm properly anchored. When that rhythm gets misaligned, which happens easily when you spend your days in dim indoor lighting and your evenings under bright screens, your sleep quality drops, your cortisol rhythm gets disrupted, and mood regulation becomes harder across the board. Large population studies, including one following over 400,000 participants through the UK Biobank, have consistently linked more time spent in outdoor light with better mood outcomes, better sleep, and healthier circadian markers. So why does this get dismissed so often? Because it's free, it takes 5 minutes, and it doesn't feel like it's doing anything in the moment. There's no dramatic before and after. But your brain doesn't need drama. It needs a consistent, correctly timed signal delivered daily to keep its internal chemistry running the way it's designed to. Here's how to actually apply this. The timing matters more than most people realize. Morning light, ideally within the first hour of waking, even on a cloudy day, is the most powerful signal for anchoring your circadian rhythm for the entire day. 10 to 15 minutes outside without sunglasses is enough. If mornings aren't possible, any outdoor light exposure during a mood dip works as a reset, not a cure, but a genuine physiological nudge back toward regulation. Notice what a bright light box actually costs compared to what a slow, unexplained months-long mood decline costs you. For many people dealing with mild, situational low mood, not clinical depression, which deserves proper professional support, the single 5-minute habit, done daily, produces a noticeable shift within 1 to 2 weeks. The theory isn't go outside and everything will be fine. The theory is that your brain runs on light the way your phone runs on electricity, and most of us are trying to operate at full capacity while quietly running on a nearly dead battery, without realizing the charger has been sitting outside the whole time. Now let's move to the theory about why your life can start to feel like it's on autopilot, and the strange neuroscience trick that switches that off. Theory 3. The main character glitch theory. Think about the last time you traveled somewhere new, not a routine trip, somewhere genuinely unfamiliar. Remember how alive that felt. Every street corner registered. Every meal, every conversation, every small decision felt vivid, almost cinematic, like you were the main character in your own story. Now think about your regular Tuesday. The same commute, the same coffee order, the same route through your apartment from bed to kitchen to desk. It doesn't feel like a movie. It barely registers at all. Days blur into each other. That's not because your regular life is objectively less interesting than a vacation. It's because your brain has done something specific to it, and understanding what that is gives you a surprisingly simple lever to pull. This is a main character glitch theory. Do one small thing differently today. A new route, a different cafe, a conversation with someone new, and notice how much more present the day suddenly feels. The theory sounds like a productivity hack. It's actually describing two well-documented neurological processes working together: habituation and hedonic adaptation. Habituation is your brain's mechanism for filtering out repeated, unimportant stimuli so it can focus attention on what's new or potentially relevant. It's why you stop noticing the hum of your refrigerator, why a strong smell fades from your awareness after a few minutes, why the 40th time you walk the same hallway, your brain barely bothers to render it in detail. This isn't a flaw, it's efficient. Your brain has finite attentional bandwidth, and it allocates that bandwidth toward things that are new, uncertain, or potentially significant, and away from things that is already classified as known, safe, handled. Hedonic adaptation works alongside this at the emotional level. Researchers studying subjective well-being have found something consistently surprising. After almost any major life change, a raise, a new relationship, even winning the lottery, people's happiness spikes initially and then drifts back toward their prior baseline, often faster than they'd expect. The mechanism underneath this involves your brain's dopamine system, which, and this is a key detail, responds most strongly not to rewards themselves, but to unexpected rewards and changes. Neuroscientists call this a reward prediction error. Dopamine fires hardest when reality is better than what your brain predicted. Once your brain updates its prediction, once the new job, the new relationship, the new city becomes the expected baseline, the dopamine response quiets down, even though nothing about the situation has actually gotten worse. This is why novelty isn't a luxury. It's a recalibration tool. When you introduce even a small unexpected variable into your day, a different route to work, a conversation with a stranger, try a food you've never had, you're not just adding variety for variety's sake. You're interrupting the habituation process. You're giving your brain something it hasn't already filed away as known, which means it has to actually pay attention again. And that attention is what makes an experience feel vivid instead of forgettable. Research on what's called a hedonic adaptation prevention model has found something practically useful here. It's not novelty alone that sustains well-being. It's variety, unexpectedness, and surprise introduced consistently into everyday life. Not one big change. Small, repeated interruptions to the routine. This is also, interestingly, tied to a documented personality trait, novelty seeking, which researchers have linked to dopamine receptor activity in the brain, suggesting some people are simply wired to crave this more than others. But the underlying mechanism is available to everyone, regardless of where you sit on that spectrum. Here's how you apply this practically, without appending your life. Pick one small variable to change today. Not your job, not your relationship. Something small enough to actually do before you finish watching this video. A different coffee shop. A walk down a street you've never taken. Starting a conversation with someone you'd normally just nod at. The goal isn't the activity itself. It's interrupting your brain's autopilot long enough to force it back into paying attention mode. Do this consistently, even once or twice a week, and you're not just adding small pleasant moments. You're actively working against a hedonic treadmill that quietly flattens your emotional experience of an otherwise good life. The uncomfortable insight buried in this theory is that most people aren't unhappy because their life lacks good things. They're unhappy because their brain has stopped registering the good things that are already there. Novelty isn't about finding something new to be happy about. It's about waking your brain back up so it can notice what was already working. Next, we're going to look at why your mind refuses to shut off at night and a surprisingly counterintuitive fix a sleep lab discovered almost by accident. Theory 4, the brain done before bed theory. If you've ever lain in bed exhausted, desperate to fall asleep, and instead found your mind cycling through tomorrow's to-do list on a loop, the email you forgot to send, the appointment you need to reschedule, the conversation you still need to have, you already understand a problem this theory solves. What you probably don't know is that scientists have run a controlled experiment on exactly this, using the gold standard method for measuring sleep, and the results genuinely surprised the researchers who conducted it. The theory sounds almost backwards. If your mind won't switch off at night, write down every unfinished task, exactly as it comes to you, right before bed. It seems like it should make things worse. You'd think confronting your to-do list right before sleep will increase anxiety, not reduce it. That's actually the exact hypothesis a team at Baylor University's Sleep Neuroscience and Cognition Laboratory set out to test. In 2018, Dr. Michael Scullin and his team ran a study published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology, General. 57 healthy young adults spent a night in a controlled sleep laboratory, hooked up to overnight polysomnography, the same technology used in clinical sleep medicine, monitoring brain waves, eye movement, and physiological activity throughout the night. Before lights out, participants were randomly assigned to one of 2 5-minute writing tasks. One group wrote a detailed to-do list of everything they needed to accomplish over the next few days. The other group wrote about tasks they had already completed over the previous few days. The researchers had 2 competing hypotheses going in. The first, writing about future, unfinished tasks would increase worry and delay sleep, since you're essentially reminding yourself of everything left undone. The second, competing hypothesis, writing the list down would offload those thoughts from working memory, reducing the mental rehearsal that normally keeps your brain active at bedtime. The second hypothesis won decisively. Participants who wrote their to-do list fell asleep significantly faster than those who journaled about completed tasks. On average, about 9 minutes faster, which in sleep science is a meaningful effect for a 5-minute, zero-cost intervention. And notably, the researchers found that writing with more specificity and detail correlated with an even stronger effect. A vague list didn't help as much as a genuinely thorough one. The explanation lead researcher Scullin offered gets at something almost everyone living in a modern, always-on environment will recognize. We live in a 24/7 culture in which our to-do lists seem to be constantly growing and causing us to worry about unfinished tasks at bedtime. Most people don't write these lists down. They just cycle through them mentally again and again, which keeps the prefrontal cortex, your brain's planning and problem-solving center, active and engaged at exactly the moment your nervous system needs to be winding down into a parasympathetic, rest-oriented state. This connects to a broader, well-established idea in cognitive psychology, sometimes called a Zeigarnik effect, the observation that unfinished tasks tend to occupy more space in our working memory and attention than completed ones. Your brain, in a sense, treats an open task like an open browser tab quietly running in the background, consuming processing power even when you're not actively thinking about it, writing the task down and externalizing it, turning it from an internal mental loop into an external physical record. Signals to your brain that the information has been safely stored elsewhere. It no longer needs to keep rehearsing it to avoid losing it. Here's how you actually use this tonight. 5 minutes before you intend to sleep. Not while scrolling your phone in bed, but as a deliberate, separate step. Take a piece of paper or a notes app and write down everything you need to do over the next few days. Not your feelings about it, not a reflection. Just the concrete tasks, written specifically, not deal with work stuff, but send the email to Sarah about the deadline. Call the dentist to reschedule. Pick up dry cleaning before Thursday. The specificity is doing real work here. A vague list still leave your brain uncertain about whether everything's actually been captured, which keeps the background process running. One important caveat worth including honestly. Scullin's own team noted their study used healthy young adults without diagnosed insomnia and cautioned that people with significant anxiety or clinical sleep disorders might respond differently. This is a strong, low-cost first step, not a replacement for professional treatment. if you're dealing with chronic insomnia. But for the ordinary, universal experience of a mind that won't stop planning tomorrow while you're trying to sleep tonight, this 5-minute habit, tested in an actual sleep lab, not just recommended anecdotally, has real evidence behind it. Now, for the theory that might be the simplest of all 5, and also, for many people, the fastest acting. Theory 5, the floor theory. There's a very specific kind of overwhelm that doesn't respond well to talking it through, thinking it through, or try to reason your way out of it. It's the feeling of your chest tightening, your thoughts moving too fast to grab onto individually, your whole body carrying a kind of static charge. In that state, advice like just calm down or try relax is almost insulting. Your nervous system isn't listening to logic right now. It needs a different kind of input entirely. And there's a strange, almost too simple intervention that works specifically because it bypasses thought altogether. The floor theory says this: when everything feels overwhelming, lie flat on the floor and focus on slow, steady breathing. Not a couch, not a bed, the floor specifically. That detail matters more than it seems. To understand why, you need to understand your autonomic nervous system, which runs on 2 competing branches. The sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight response. It activates during stress, danger, or perceived threat, elevating heart rate, tightening muscles, sharpening focus onto the threat, and narrowing everything else out. The parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite, often called rest and digest, and it's responsible for slowing your heart rate, lowering blood pressure, and returning your body to a baseline state where digestion, healing, and clear thinking can actually happen. When you're overwhelmed, you're stuck in a sympathetically dominant state, and the frustrating part is that most attempt to think your way out of it actually keep the sympathetic system engaged, because thinking, especially anxious, looping thinking, is itself a form of activation. What actually shifts your nervous system out of that state isn't more thinking. It's specific physical input, primarily delivered to the vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve in the body, and the primary communication channel of the parasympathetic system. This is where the floor comes in. Lying flat, with your full body weight supported by a firm, unmoving surface, provides strong proprioceptive input, sensory feedback from receptors in your muscles and joints that tell your brain exactly where your body is in space and how it's being supported. Deep, stable pressure and full body ground contact have been shown across multiple lines of research, including work on grounding, deep pressure stimulation, and body-based trauma therapies. To reliably activate parasympathetic responses, your nervous system, on some primitive level, interprets, I am fully, stably supported by solid ground, and I am not moving as a signal of safety. It's very hard to be in danger while lying motionless, fully supported on the floor, and your body knows that even when your racing thoughts don't. Combine that with slow, controlled breathing, specifically extending your exhale longer than your inhale, and you're stacking 2 separate parasympathetic activators at once. Research on breathing and autonomic regulation has consistently shown that slow, diaphragmatic breathing with elongated exhales lowers heart rate, reduces measured markers of stress, and produces measurable increases in parasympathetic activity. This isn't a vague wellness claim. It's been measured directly via heart rate variability and other autonomic markers in controlled studies. The vagus nerve runs directly alongside your diaphragm, which is part of why breath is one of the few autonomic functions you can consciously override to influence the rest of the system. There's also something worth naming about why the floor works better than, say, your bed or couch, even though those are softer. A soft surface gives inconsistent, shifting feedback. Your body has to make small constant adjustments to stay stable, which keeps a low level of muscular engagement and attentional monitoring active. A firm, flat floor removes that variable entirely. There's nothing to adjust to. Your body can fully release because it doesn't need to do any ongoing work to stay supported. Here's how to actually use this. When you notice that overwhelmed, static charge feeling building before it fully takes over, find a clear patch of floor. Lie flat on your back, arms slightly away from your body, legs uncrossed. Close your eyes if that feels safe to do. Breathe in slowly through your nose for about 4 counts. Then exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 to 8 counts. The extended exhale is doing real physiological work here, not just providing something to focus on. Stay there for 2 to 5 minutes, paying attention to the actual physical sensation of the floor supporting your weight. Your shoulder blades, your lower back, the back of your skull, all fully held by a surface that isn't going anywhere. This isn't a cure for chronic anxiety, and if overwhelm is a frequent, intense experience for you, that's worth bringing to a professional. But as an in-the-moment reset, something you do anywhere with no equipment in under 5 minutes, grounding your body on a firm, stable surface while breathing slowly is one of the most direct, physiologically backed ways to interrupt the stress spiral that exists. Sometimes the way out of an overwhelmed mind isn't through more thinking. It's through the floor. Now, let's bring all 5 of these together, because the real power here isn't any single theory. It's what happens when you understand the pattern underneath all of them. Look back at everything we just covered, and a pattern starts to emerge that's easy to miss if you take each theory on its own. The let them theory works by redirecting your attention away from what you can't control and back toward what you can, shifting your locus of control inward. The sunlight theory works by giving your brain's internal clock the specific input it needs to regulate mood chemistry correctly. The main character glitch works by interrupting habituation, forcing your attention back onto a life your brain had quietly stopped noticing. The brain dump before bed theory works by externalizing mental load your working memory was straining to hold on to. And the floor theory works by giving your nervous system unambiguous physical proof of safety, bypassing thought entirely. Notice what none of these have in common. None of them require willpower in the way we usually think about it. None of them are about trying harder, thinking more positively, or forcing a mood shift through sheer determination. Every single one of these works by changing an input, light, physical position, written external memory, small environmental variation, a 2-word mental reframe, and letting your nervous system respond the way it's biologically designed to respond. That's the real thread connecting all 5. Your brain and body are constantly responding to conditions you put them in, whether or not you're paying attention to that fact. Most people spend years trying to white-knuckle their way through low mood, overwhelm, or racing thoughts, when the actual lever was something far smaller and far more mechanical than they assumed. This is also, in a strange way, a hopeful finding. It means you don't need to overhaul your personality, your career, or your entire life to meaningfully shift how you feel day to day. A 5-minute writing habit before bed. 10 minutes of morning light. 1 small deviation from your routine. 2 words when someone disappoints you. A few minutes flat on the floor when things feel like too much. None of these are large asks. All of them are backed by real, peer-reviewed research, not just intuition or tradition. And the research consistently points to the same underlying idea. Small, consistently applied habits produce outsized effects on how your brain and nervous system function over time, not through one dramatic change, but through repeated, correct inputs, day after day. If you're looking for where to start, don't try to implement all 5 tonight. Pick the one that maps most directly onto whatever you're currently struggling with. If your mind won't shut off at night, start with a brain dump. If your mood has been quietly flat for weeks, start with morning sunlight. If you're spending energy managing other people's choices, start practicing let them. If life has started to feel like it's on repeat, break 1 small pattern this week. And if you're in a genuinely overwhelmed moment right now, close this video and go find a patch of floor. None of these theories are magic, and none of them replace real support when you need it. If you're dealing with something heavier than day-to-day stress, a conversation with a therapist or doctor is worth more than any of the 5 things covered here. But for the ordinary universal experience of a mind that's a little too loud, a mood that's a little too flat, and a life that's started to feel a little too automatic, these 5 small, evidence-backed shifts are some of the most efficient tools available. Not because they're clever, because they work with your biology instead of against it. If this kind of content, real research, translated into something you can actually use, is useful to you, subscribe, because that's exactly what this channel is built around. And if there's a specific theory from today that you want to see explored in more depth in a future video, leave it in the comments. We read every one.